Hey, good morning. Welcome to In Case You Wanted to Know with Jim Henderson. My name is John. Also in the room with us is Derek. How's it going, gents?
It's going fine. It's a Friday.
It is a Friday in the midst of a polar vortex.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about sustainability and climate change when it's snowing in Florida and fires are raging out in California and so on and so forth. So great timing.
Happy days.
Happy days.
Well, today, let's, in keeping with a lot of the things that we talk about, sustainability based, let's talk about the biases in the realm of sustainability. We had a talk off mic about this the other day, and it led to kind of a fascinating discussion. And so let's put a couple of minutes towards it here today.
Yeah, I think it warrants talking about for all of the talk that we hear, and again, I'm not, as you guys know, I'm not somebody. If I'm talking about it, then I'm usually not doing something, and there are those that talk and those that do. So I think these are very valid. Derek, you pulled these up. These are things that are real. Why don't we embrace sustainability as a society? And there's a number of reasons, a number of things that are stacked against this concept of working to create a more sustainable environment. And it's interesting. And I'm open to one of you just pulling up one of these and then discussing it. There's quite a list of what we call biases towards action. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think that's the right word. And we'll share with anybody who's watching or listening to this what started the conversation for us. We were talking about investment groups and their interest or lack thereof in forward-thinking, progressive, sustainable projects, and the fact that a prevailing attitude within these investment groups seems to be, no, we're not interested in it. When there's a product that offers solutions to a lot of problems. The wildfires in California. What if you had a home that was not susceptible to fire damage, or that, you could save on greenhouse emissions by utilizing solar on your home in a climate that was built for it? And they're not, investment groups don't seem to be interested in this because it's all about profit as opposed to answering the problem.
Right. And the first question is about profit. It's what's the average cost per square foot? Well, as we know, when you build a house that's made out of steel and you strap on solar panels and batteries, it's going to be about 40% more. But Jim, you can go into what the right question is long term and talk about the finances long term and the savings.
We work in our business, William C. Huff Companies. We work with a lot of ultra high net worth homeowners. And I remember years ago, a good friend of mine is a builder from Maine, but he builds down here, and he was transitioning into building higher end homes. And we were at a meeting, kind of a network meeting with other builders, and they were promoting one of the new homes that he and a group of others had built. And they were in an upscale neighborhood, and the discussion came around dollars per square foot for houses. And he said, I have a tough time overcoming the question, what does it cost per square foot? And I looked at him and I said, well, if you're working with certain type of clients, it shouldn't be about what it costs per square foot. It's what's the experience? What are you going to experience with this home? Because if you can address those issues, it doesn't come down to what the cost is per square foot. So projecting that forward, and he's become very successful. He said that was the turning point in his career. He never really thought about building a home that focused on or a perceived need for the client. I said simply, if you have a client that collects cars, you should talk about how his garage is going to really enhance his car collection. Or if the wife is really into cooking, you talk about the kitchen that you're going to build. And now it's not a question of what is it per square foot. It's how can we meet that need. So projecting that into sustainability, we've been working on this concept now for more than 4 years. And there are times when we're in the press and people, the phones start ringing. I read that article, and invariably these are builders or homeowners, would-be homeowners, and they say the first question is, what is it per square foot? And And I always say that's the wrong question, because it's what are you doing with that structure? What are we doing with it? And when you do that, you're not thinking of what it is per square foot. The other common question is, what's my return on investment? And I was like, we buy cars. There's no return on investment for most cars unless it's a real collectible one. But you buy one because it's cheaper than renting one by the day, right?
Or running
So
everywhere like Forrest Gump.
yeah, so we have this
Boris got to
bias
skip leg day, though.
already about a home has to be about square footage, costs. It has to be my return on investment, and we're programmed to think that rather than being programmed to think, what is it going to save me? What is it? What am I going to get from this? How is this structure going to change things, not just in my lifetime, but over the lifetime of the structure? What value does this bring to the table? And those are the questions that I think if they're asked, it changes that bias to what is it per square foot? What's my return on investment?
Well,
Right?
and a lot of it is confirmation bias, which means people that often prefer information and a path in life that matches their beliefs, right? And so changing that bias is the challenge of marketers like me that are in this realm, in the sustainability realm. We do this in picking our news channels and where we decide to take news and read online. And it's no different here. Again, if you're a person and you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, maybe even 90s, why are you going to change from a brick and mortar home? It's worked for you this long. Why change? Why care about carbon footprint? Why care about saving money down the road? Why care about having high impact siding so that, when a hurricane hits, you're not going to have your house get knocked over? Having a steel frame, like, why do they care? It's worked for me this far. Why not continue right till the end?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a tough hurdle to get over. And going back to what we were talking about, that Jim mentioned about your return on investment and what's the cost per square foot. I appreciate that side of the conversation or the argument because I consider myself pretty cheap. I'm pretty frugal about all things financial. So I think those are important too. But what is so shocking to me and has become even more so in recent years is the seeming inability of people to not see the solution that is right in front of them. To again, going back to the wildfires, you see these entire neighborhoods completely gone, everything burned to the ground. We talked about this yesterday or the day before, Jim, that home in the panhandle of Florida, the hurricane came through and just flattened everything, except the one house that remained standing. Now, wouldn't it be nice if a wildfire came through an area, if there were a whole lot more houses that were left standing? Well, a house that is primarily built of steel is that answer. And it's shocking how many developers, investors, even homeowners and home buyers, you say, here's the solution to the problem. And they go, you know what? It just doesn't work for me. Why?
It goes back to the cost per square foot that is so ingrained in people's minds. They can't get past that. And for example, the first house we built down on Benson Street, I remember there was a couple, somebody here that we do business with. His wife absolutely demanded, got to see this. This is the greatest thing. I got to see it. We met at the house, and this person went up one side of me and down the other as an authority on the best way to build a house. And there was not one thing about the house that I was showing this person that was going to convince her that this was worth the money. It was in her head right from the beginning, and I think the whole meeting was set up so that she could blast me and tell me what a stupid idea I had. And it didn't matter what I said. I could have said,
Now, pardon me, Jim, for the viewer or the listener, the house that Jim is referring to is a home that was built out of largely recycled steel, solar powered. It was built on all the principles of sustainability.
Correct.
So very little wood, and it made a lot of noise in the community because it was something different. So
Right.
sorry to interrupt, but I wanted
No,
to.
no, but yeah, for those that don't know. But again, that was our first foray into taking a concept from the ground up, because we know solar works. We know that batteries can store energy, and it's fairly efficient and cost effective these days. It really is. Based on building it from the ground up properly, is going to outperform every single house collectively on the street, because they don't have solar. There's nothing sustainable about any of them. The next hurricane that comes through, they're going to have to replace their roofs again. They're going to have flooding. They're going to have all these issues. Whereas this one house is sitting there and there's not going to be any issues. In fact, they're going to have power when no one else has power. The tyranny of the urgent, right? So the bias on square foot costs, you have to overcome that first and foremost. I think that's one of the biggest biases we have.
And that's called short-term bias. I mean, that's just what it's called.
They're not looking past the moment, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about education through the marketing process. Is that right, Derek?
That's the first step, is education and getting people to say, okay, this aligns with my beliefs now, right? And then after that, it's getting into the mindset of, and again, if you're later on in life, if you're building a house, if you're leaving it to your family, do you want to leave something that is resilient, that can withstand a hurricane down here, that is going to have a fixed price long term, that is going to, again, if you're going to pass it along to family members, is this house something that they're going to want to live in? And can they save money? And does it make sense fiscally the answer is yes. If you build a steel framed house, high impact siding, there's fixtures called water sense fixtures that can save up to $350 in a household per year. And again, if you do these things, it's going to benefit you long term, not short term. You're going to pay more up front, but the long term ramifications for the planet and for your family and the folks that you're passing this home on to, you cannot dispute it.
Well, I think that for the individual, a lot of us as individuals rely on when the bigger players in our community adopt a new technology. It's easier because now we say, oh, it's worked for that big group over there, that developer. They're building a sustainable community. Okay. I think it's easier for an individual to maybe get on board with that. So that's fine. Maybe that helps people get over that bias. My current frustration right now is seeing the lack of desire on the part of those bigger groups, those developers, those investment companies, things like that, they consciously, their answer is, no, we're not interested in it. Or that the profit margin is not high enough for us. Okay, well, somebody has to take the step. Somebody has to take the first step and do it, which is what Jim did years ago by building that first sustainable home here in Naples, with another one going now. And as you said, I was there for all of that. I saw the national news coverage that came in and the people that were calling and emailing and wanted to know more about it. It's the frustration, though, for me, and forgive me if it's visible, is that, like I said, everybody just wants it. They want it now, and they want it to be perfect, and they want it to be cheap, and they're not willing to pay for it, but damn it, they want it.
And that falls into the self-serving bias. So here's yet another bias, and this one is for people who want to have something that their other buddies don't have, or family members don't have. Mm-hmm. And so interestingly, you will see that some of these sustainable homes will actually sell anywhere from 7 to 15% more at the time of the sale, whether it was just built, but even more later on, because of the fact that there is people out there that want something that nobody else has, and they can tell the story, hey, look at me. I'm being sustainable with a solar powered home, steel, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. And that's a bias that we can tap into, that we should tap into.
Right. That is a pro bias. In many respects, the term luxury is something that you can have that few people have. And it doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, in our case, like you said, it can run 30 to 40% more for a home. That's kind of on the high level. I think in volume, it could be as little as 15 or 20% difference. But being able to say you have something that someone else doesn't is the ultimate term for luxury. it's luxury of going to a restaurant that very, very few people can afford or know about, those kinds of things. And so, yeah, that's something we could tap into. And I think in many respects, if we can get people to mirror that, at least you can get some traction, and get people on board, because once you're on board, you're going to be an advocate. You're not going to live in one of these homes and then just say, it's just a regular home. No, you're going to tell your friends and you're going to brag. You're going to go out to dinner and say, hey, but getting that initial bump past you and not buying into all of the biases against it is the hardest part. It really is.
Well, and there's a saying, the right things are the hardest things to do. And sometimes it's not something that certain people want to do. As we all know, we all have people in our lives that if you give them the right path, that's harder, and the wrong path, that's easy, they sprint to the wrong path and you're just scratching your head, doing a face palm and everything else. But for those out there who do want to do right and do want to leave a legacy, sustainability is a really nice way to leave a nice legacy behind.
I have a visual. You're bringing up I got something you don't have. Here's one. Think about this one. This is a reality because, I went totally green with my existing house just to prove how much more expensive it is per square foot to retrofit an existing home versus building from the ground up, like we are with this other home that we're working on. Just think about this. It's pretty cold here. I mean, we can't compare to below zero up north, but we're talking 40s in Florida. And all I can think of is I do not have to stand outside and fill my car up in the cold, because I can just plug it in when I get home in my garage and not be out in the cold for even 1 minute, because I chose a different path for my energy consumption and production. And maybe that visual would ring pretty solid with a lot of people up north, where it's -5, -10, and they're outside, putting gas in their car, whereas they could just have plugged it in last night when they went home.
That's luxury right there. You get some. Here's the great example of making a sustainable move. You get built-in luxury. Comes along with the package.
Yeah, you're not standing in the driving rain or whatever. I haven't had to fill my car up once in over a year. I plug it in. It takes about 3 seconds. I go in the house, and in the morning, it takes 3 seconds to unplug it, and you're ready to go for another 250 miles.
Yeah.
And that's convenience. And sometimes we don't think about that. The convenience of, when power goes out, because it will, it happens all around the country for whatever reason, whether it's snow, ice, rain, hurricane, flooding. When the power goes out, I'm still going to have power, and that's convenience. None of my neighbors are going to have power like I do.
There is one more bias that I want to slip in here, and that is, and again, a quote, they're biased, so they're wrong. That is an absolute fallacy. Just because somebody has a bias doesn't make them wrong. It means it's an opportunity for them to be educated and to start making educated decisions, not based on bias in the future. And so I think it's important to call that out. We're not crapping on anybody for having a bias or having a viewpoint, just that there is an opportunity. We would ask everybody to be open to the fact that maybe there isn't a better way, an easier way for living sustainably and living in this world in a way that's thoughtful for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a solid universal truth.
If you look at from any long-term perspective, more than 6 or 7 years, it's going to make 100% sense. If you're looking at it from short-term, less than 5 years, there's really nothing other than you're helping the environment. And if helping the environment is something you really are motivated to do, then the long-term benefits, hands down, outweigh the short-term costs by a lot. Particularly its global impact on a much larger level.
Well, this is a good conversation. I think it's a necessary one, but man, is it frustrating.
Sure.
So I hate to end our conversation on for me what feels like a down note. But it is, like I said, these biases, they're not new. It's just a new topic to have a bias about, which is not an inherent bad thing. We all have our own biases, but hopefully people will be open to something new that has a positive impact, not only right now, but far, far down the road. So,
well, take it from somebody who littered everywhere in Vermont growing up to this enlightened, perfect human being now that has no bias. It can be done.
And is the pinnacle of modesty.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a beautiful, image of perfection at this point.
I love it. That's how we're going to end this podcast.
There you go, with a joke.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's always good to chat.
All right. Thanks, John.
See you guys.
Soon.